All right. Hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today we have a super interesting and exciting guest. Danny Goler is an independent researcher who is known for his thought-provoking explorations of consciousness and the nature of reality with unique ability to bridge science, philosophy, and the spiritual pursuit, all things that I love. Danny engages audiences in deep conversations about reality and our place in it. He's the founder of the Code of Reality, an interdisciplinary initiative that explores what he calls cognitive physics, the fertile territory where mind and matter meet. The Code of Reality, or core, convenes scientists, philosophers, technologists, which I don't even know what that means, and indigenous wisdom keepers in collaborative investigations designed to blur the line between observer and observed. By fostering dialogue across disciplines normally siloed from one another, CORE serves as both a research hub and a cultural bridge, advancing holistic science of consciousness that can thrive alongside mainstream physics. Oh my gosh. Okay. Now that I'm reading your bio, I'm all in, man. I'm so excited. So Danny, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Victoria.
So how did you get to be the guy that's doing this work? Because I think you have a really interesting story.
I think the gist of it is that I was always interested in the big questions, and I was not satisfied with the kinds of answers I was getting from basically all domains. And I guess I got lucky. I looked in the right place, and I basically figured out that there's a way to stabilize, for lack of a better term, a signal that comes from, I guess, the psychedelic space, specifically with DMT. And if you use diffracted lasers and you project them on a surface while you're on DMT, you will see what at least seems to be like a self-executing code of some sort. And this obviously both excites and upsets everybody equally. It's from the scientific community for the obvious reasons, which is, come on, man, you're high out of your mind. Why would you think you found something real? But also from the spiritual community, because there is this very big insistence from the spiritual community that all of these things are very personal, they're very subjective, they present themselves to us in a way that we understand, and all of this beautiful jazz that I'm all for. However, there seems to be also layers in that realm that are more, for all intents and purposes, what we would borrow from the old way of perceiving things. They're more objective. They actually happen on their own side, and they're part of what you would call the structure, and they are also a thing on its own side. And so it kind of set me up on this journey where I, originally tried to talk to scientists about this, and obviously it's a very difficult conversation to have, because what do you say, right? But then I started talking about this online, and it started picking up thrust, and people got interested, and I started getting invited to things, and slowly but surely we picked up pace, and now we officially became an actual organization that like the introduction, you said in the introduction, we have some physicists on board and some philosophers, and technologists just means people who either build or activate around technology. Yeah.
I just never heard the word before, and I liked it.
So that's kind of like places me in this very interesting position where I'm seeing myself more like a bridge, which I know is something that is very often the case with people who are, they're teachers. I don't necessarily I see myself less of a teacher and more of somebody who actually tries to my best to translate between domains, because I do notice that people speak past each other very often. Yeah. And I have enough experience with meditation proper, like I'm a long time Vipassana practitioner, and I have enough experience with science to understand what is being missed very often. And that puts me in a really fun position, because I get to say, hey, no, they're not wrong. They just mean X. And then
I love that.
You can kind of proceed from there.
I love that. You said a couple things that I already really want to unpack. The first thing you said, I mean, I like your dilemma, and I'm very curious about it. Between, the spiritual, if I understood you correctly, spiritual folks, probably like me, thinking, what's the objective thing? It's how we perceive it. And, I believe we all have an individual connection to the truth, and we got to find our own. So that's the way I perceive things. But yeah. I'm open to other other ways of perceiving that, for the very reason if I'm not, then I wouldn't be I wouldn't be following my own rules. But before we get to that, which we will, you said something else, and I was thinking about this as I was doing my little pre meditation walk on our episode. Right? You said something else like a lot of people now are using psychedelics and having these experiences that seem more real than reality, right? They're having these big, experiences. And I remember I had, and I'm getting to the question, I promise. I remember I had a guest on the show who was talking about spirit guides, which is something we talk about all the time on the show. And she's like, I felt like I was connecting with them and I got messages, but it wasn't until I was doing mushrooms and I saw them that I believed that they were real. Mm. And, my mind's like thinking, that's when you thought they were real, when you're but I love how, there's just different portals into reality and different ways of expanding our mind. And the way that I've always understood it or been explained is, our brain is sort of a little gateway, a little filter, right? And so sometimes when we alter that filter a little bit, we can actually get a broader view of what's really going on. And all of that said, for you, my question is, what makes you think that those experiences you're having on DMT are more real than the experiences you're having when you're not?
You're talking about the experiment or just in general with psychedelics?
Both.
Both. Good question. I think that actually ties to the translation part. So, for example, when you said that's when you thought it was real, because it sounds that just hidden in your reaction is that you probably consider somatic experiences where like the truth resides. Would
right.
that be accurate?
I mean, I'm totally open-minded, but most people would not. Right. Most people that grew up in the same the same conditioning that I did wouldn't make that assumption. Oh, now that I saw this thing on a mind altering substance, it must be true. Right. And I was curious about that. Right. I was curious about what made that more real for her.
That's okay. That's a really important clarification, because there's two different things here that happen sometimes, and now I understand which one was happening for you. So there's the one, it was the one that I thought was happening, which is that there's people define reality in different ways depending on who they are and how they perceive things, and a lot of the miscommunication usually happens when people like speak from this axiom and speak from this axiom. They don't realize that actually they're saying the same thing, and in that, there's some people that are closer to their bodies just experientially, and these are the people that define reality more somatically.
Right.
So they have to feel to know, and other people are. It can be multiple things. It can be either cerebral or they're just more artistic in that way. So the visual field is actually where reality is for them,
right?
And that's how they define it, and that's. Whenever those channels are clearer, then for them it's more real.
Right. And that's exactly, I think, what her experience was.
Yeah, I think it's actually relatively easy to illustrate, not the details, but the kind of the generality of it. We all know that when we wake up from a very realistic dream, even though I now, there's a lot of people that email me that are like, they've been doing OBEs and they're experts in, lucid dreaming and things like this. And a lot of people report to me things that are foreign to me, honestly, but I believe them. They say that for them, some of their dreams are more real than life. So set that aside for a second. For the majority of the time, like regular dreams, you know the difference when you wake up, right? And then you go like, oh, right, that was a dream. Okay, so you don't think about it, but your brain is using criteria to determine why that is, right?
Yeah.
And one of them is edge detection. So like things are sharper in reality. It's more continuous over time. All of these things we just take for granted. In a dream, things are more cloudy. They're a little bit less continuous. And, you can throw like explanations on it. You can say, well, it's because the prefrontal cortex is offline, so there's no tracking. Whatever the reason is, that's different. You're in the mall, and then all of a sudden you're with a gorilla, and it doesn't happen that way in reality. So you can say that on psychedelics, especially on things like DMT, all of these things go one level up. So like literally the edges become sharper than this. So this feels like the dream. And it kind of like it go one level up. And that's actually a very confounding experience because when you have it, as Terence McKenna used to say, you could believe it only if it wasn't happening to you. So like if you would hear it in a story, you're kind of like, okay, I get it. But when it's actually happening to you, you're like, what? That's crazy. Like you don't expect this to actually be the case. And I think then the conversation is further complicated by the fact that now I'm very aware that there's so many people that carry certain abilities, especially people that are more in the spiritual communities, and that's why they gravitate those communities because these kind of things are much more acceptable and they don't feel like outsiders, right?
Right.
But they, people email me with like they see things since they were little kids and they're like, I'm not crazy. Like I know I'm not crazy. I know I don't have schizophrenia. I looked into it. People were like doctors, lawyers, and they're
Yeah.
like, hey, I can't talk about it because I'm going to lose my job for sure. But I'm like, first of all, there's always like this very big sense of encouragement for me. They're like, please keep going, like all of that stuff. But then they share their story, and because so many people experience things, it's almost like we always assume everybody kind of knows the same thing, but in reality, people's experience can be so different, right? So that's where kind of this idea comes from. Oh, there's probably nothing that can be actually like truly known about the other person's experience. But see, this to me, which I think goes to the heart of your question, or the comment you made before, is actually overshooting the mark, because that
Okay.
part isn't true. So like, of course, there's similarities. Like otherwise, we wouldn't be able to communicate at all, right? It's not like you just I'm seeing a couch and you see a giraffe. Like that's not happening, right? You might see it slightly in a different color, or maybe even your perception of the depth of what the couch really is. Like maybe you have an ability to perceive its essence more. Very possible. But if we sit on the couch, we both sit on the couch. There's like a consensus reality here, right? And I think that where we are overshooting the mark, and it is an important thing to point out because we want to map accurately. We don't want to map something that isn't happening, right? So like as much as I absolutely believe in the law of attraction, I've experienced miracles in my life. I'm all for it. I know it's real. I've experienced it many times. But hey, I can't walk through the wall. Neither can you. And if you want to insist that maybe one day you can, well, tell you what, when you can, we'll talk about it. So until that day comes, that's an important data point that, hey, you can't walk through the wall. Why is that? Because I see, even in the most open-minded perception that I certainly hold, which is that ultimately it's all mind, and I think you and I would probably align on that, right? So
Mhm.
it's all universal mind. But whatever this universal mind is doing, at least in this region of where we experience the world right now, it has some regularities. It's kind of working by certain rules, right? And therefore, certain portions of that larger mind space behaves like the laws of physics. And that's okay. Like we should acknowledge this. And something tells me that actually the real kind of opening will be a combination of these much more open-ended modalities that the spiritual community usually utilizes, like hey, like we are way more of a creator than we give ourselves credit for, at least in the old perception, like the physicalist perception, and the combination of the ability to look at things very accurately, being very methodical, bringing everything the scientific method has to offer, and then combining these modalities and realize that we should just expand the definition of what science is in general, which is, I always say that capital S science, like science as a whole, should just be defined as the enterprise of understanding.
Right.
Full stop. And then all of a sudden, meditation is
Right.
fully included in science because you observe something closely, you notice what's going on, you can communicate to other people, they can repeat the process. It's science. You are studying something. You're trying to understand something, and I think that kind of diffuses a lot of the miscommunication and headbutting that sometimes happen between the different domains, I believe.
Hey, beautiful. You said so much in there. I want to go to walls. I want to talk about walls.
That's the
Um, because here's what I think. Okay. And here's how it's been explained to me. And I love science. I have a PhD and I did research and published research, and it's all really fun. And I also don't care. Like, our tagline on the show is we're spirituality and
wait. Just
psychology.
so I understand and I don't misunderstand you, you don't care about what specifically?
I love science. I have neuroscientists on the show. I've had psychiatrists on the show. I've had physicists on the show. I love the people that are bridging that gap and showing where there's the alignment. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think we're going to see it more and more and more because, to some degree, wherever you point your lens, you're going to find what you're looking for. And I think so. I think it's beautiful, beautiful work. And I think a lot of people need that. A lot of people want to know this whole world and this whole way of understanding things and what I thought was the truth and that what I thought was legitimacy and what I kind of rest my safety and security in, that this also lines up with that other stuff that I'm curious about, or, this other way of viewing the universe. And so I think it's really important. And I love the people that do it. I personally don't need it, right? For me, again, I'm a deep knower, and I just, when I know something in my bones, I know it. And when I hear something from my guides and it feels right, I know it and I trust it for as long as it feels relevant. And then if it doesn't feel relevant anymore, I let it go and I see what they have to say next. And one of the things that they've shared with me about walls, so I just want to throw this at you and see what you get, is, it's around that consensus reality. Like, most of us believe really, 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 really hard. We have a lot of investment in the fact that, there's a wall there and we're not going through it. It would be really hard to unbelieve that. It would probably be unnecessary to unbelieve that. So for me, I don't feel that the existence of walls is more true than, beliefs I have about myself that are hopefully more malleable. I just believe that there's certain aspects of this shared consensual reality that are just really locked in, and probably most of us, are not going to be able to get to the place where we unbelieve them. Right. But that said, I'm not one of these people, but I absolutely believe there are people that can make things move with their minds. There are people that have had experiences with bilocating, right? So all of these things would seem to defy at least the laws of Newtonian physics, right?
Sure. And this is what I'm saying. We definitely have to expand of what we think we understand just purely from a very naive physicalist perspective. But the emphasis is simply to not overshoot the mark. That's all.
Got
It's
it.
not to say, yeah, that's all. It's like there's almost an insistence. I don't know. My hair is misbehaving right now. See, the physicalist
It's
perspective is
awesome.
coming in. Yeah. Um, there's nothing in what you said breaks. Well, okay. There's a line, as you will notice. I quote Terrence a lot because it happens to be very close to my heart because I'm writing a movie about him. But he used to say, we should always, of course, be suspect of science like we are of any institution. However, none of us is at liberty to abandon common sense.
Yeah.
And that to me is where it's at. So it's like you there's a certain level of regularity that even exists within the realm of listening to guides and all of that stuff. And I would add to that, and this is just purely my perspective, of course, so people can take it with a grain of salt. But my perspective is that the guides are not interested in guiding us forever. They want us to learn how to be our own, hold our own. So they can be, it's almost like every time they have to nudge you, it's almost like, okay, when are they going to get it? So at a certain point, you kind of have to take responsibility for how I always kind of see it as a birth of responsibility. I've had this experience on an ayahuasca ceremony once where I was so familiar with the gestalt that something was a little off in the execution of the way it looked visually. And it's just how my brain works. It's obviously not most people's reaction to this kind of a thing. Most people just continue, and there will probably be a healthier attitude. But I kind of paused in there, and I kind of said, "Hey, this purple is not exactly right." And then she looked back at me, Mama Aya, and she said, "Yeah, because I asked her to be more DMT like, because I was like, I like visual. Can you make it more visual?" To your question before, and she's like, "Oh, sure, no problem." And then she made it like super visual. And then I said, "Hey, this purple's a little off." And she goes, "Well, what do you mean? Like, I'm not DMT. Like, you asked me, that's the best I could do." And then there was this little crack of understanding, and it's almost like she paused and she looked back whether I got the hint. And she looked at me and I go, "Wait." She's like, "Well, yeah, what does that mean?" And I go like, oh, you don't know everything." She's like, "No." She's like, I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me.
Yeah.
You are a participator in this. Yes, I know more than you will ever know about humans
Yeah.
because that's all I do. But I don't know everything. And what you doing right now, there's certain things in them that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And everybody are like that. So it's a communication, it's a relationship.
1,000%.
And in that regard, that's what I mean. Like we
It's
should.
huge. That's a huge point. Thank you for fleshing that out. 1,000%.
Yeah, and it's like there's a difference between we should always remain humble simply because it's wiser, right? There's so many other things that we don't understand, and science can definitely get a really nice kick in the ass of some humility. I'm with you 100%. But this very kind of dichotomous game that people play, actually the ego always kind of like comes back in. Yeah, so there's always there's something a little bit dichotomous about how people do these things, even in the name of ascending and in the name of
Yeah.
spirituality. I'm always trying to remind myself, yes, we want to remain humble, but also we want to take responsibility for what we do understand. It's almost like, yes, you definitely know very, very little. I wouldn't go as far as to say we know nothing. I think that's overshooting it again. But the little that we do know, the universe does want us to stand there and say, hey, I know
Yeah.
this. Like I figured this out. And the universe goes, thank you. That's something that I couldn't do without you. Wonderful. Let's add it to the pile.
Yeah.
And I find that to be a very beautiful relationship between what the all is doing and what
It's
we as kind of like individuals are doing, and there's like an interplay between those two.
That's a beautiful way of explaining it. That's my experience as well. And I also think what I think you are maybe hearing, but maybe listeners were hearing this too, and maybe it's not what you're hearing. So I'll put it out there is, I'm just going to say what I'm thinking is that, I think one of the things that's happened, especially I would say it's been really front and center over maybe the last like 5 to 7 years. But it was happening, way before that, is this idea of science is God, right? The scientists say this. If the science says that, that has to be the truth. And, I feel skeptical about that, having been someone that's worked, yes, in the pseudosciences. So it's a little looser, but it's political. It's just a method of inquiry. It's what questions you choose to ask. It's how you choose to interpret the answers that you get, right? So I'm not assigning my truth to that. It's an interesting method of inquiry. I'm fascinated by it. It's given us a lot of great information, but it's not my God. And it's the same thing when I talk to spirit, right? Everything I always share this on the show, and I'll share it again now, right? It's like there's always a cooperation. I'm always listening. I'm always feeling in. My guides always say, you're the, like, similar to what you got, you're the man on the ground, or woman in this case, right? Like that's what you're here to do. Like, we don't have your perspective. We can't tell you what you should do. There are things that we don't know because we're not looking through your eyeballs. And that's really important. It's a co-creation. We're all playing together. But I'm really big on not assigning your authority to anyone or anything else, right? That's why,
I just
again, we go to this, your truth is for you alone.
I just don't think any real scientist worth their salt is defining science as God. We
Yeah.
put a lot. We're putting a lot of trust in it because it works for what it's trying to do. Does it need to expand? For sure.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same as some dogmatic attitudes that I think that these more. My impression is that what you just said, even though I get where it's coming from, I feel like that's more of a trope that actually people on the spiritual side use to strawman what scientists believe it to be. I don't think that's actually happening. It's true that scientists very often can come across as vain and pompous and
Oh,
kind of
I'm
know
not
better than
putting down
anyone else.
scientists. I'm saying the way people use a term like, I trust the science.
That's I think so.
Yeah, I'm
I see
not
what you're
talking
pointing
about
to.
the
I
actual
see what you're saying.
scientists.
So in
Yeah,
that case,
no.
I would say that's more of a product of a very mediocre understanding of what science is.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's what
Yeah.
really the product. And you're right. You're right. There's a very large swath of the population that only know very superficial level, kind of like how science is done, and the fact that it's a very human enterprise, and there's politics and like all of that
Yeah.
stuff is happening anyway, and they are the ones that kind of just go with the thing. And I see what you're pointing to. To me, it's almost like what is the rational, practical way forward if we want to be realistic about what can actually happen, right? So we're not gonna. By the way, I don't think we want to. You might. I don't know if you will disagree or not, but like I don't think we want to let go of technology. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh
I think,
no.
I think the issue is the it's the attitude behind it, which is us, right? So it's almost like if I have to think of it like a little bit more poetically, it's almost like if this is a video game, that's kind of like my vision, right? It's that if this is a video game, you know these like RPG video games, like role playing games where you just play in like a little city and then you finish the whatever you had to do and then you get to play on the world map, right? So it's almost like we're doing that. Like we're on Earth right now, we're being tested. It's like, hey, if you do things in a way that you show that you clearly can be trusted with larger gifts, then they will become available to you, these tools. If you don't, they won't. And then you just kind of like you stay on this little rock. But if you do complete the levels, which would probably include things like showing that the ethical level is on a certain level, our connection, feeling of how we are connected to everything else, to each other, to the land, all of these things. Can we be custodians of divine knowledge versus just people, beings who just kind of use it for their own personal gain, right? If we pass all of that, then it's almost like we're now taking a step back, rooting ourselves into the ground, grounding ourselves, and then if we're grounded enough, now we get to go and fly and like spread our wings and explore the galaxy and do whatever and go into spiritual realms and just as a civilization, not like a few people who know how to do it. You know what I mean? That's kind of like my vision of what's going on here. And if this is a very, because you said you have a PhD, right?
I
And
do.
what is your PhD in?
Psychology.
Okay, so you swam in academia a little bit, quite a bit actually, because you have to do quite a bit to get a PhD.
So it's not super easy. Yeah. Took
No,
some
it's
time.
not super easy at all. Yeah, and you are absolutely right to point out that the cultural part definitely needs to go through some, you know, reformulation. Let's call it. And to a large degree, and I think it depends, like you said, depending where you're looking. But I do feel much more openness. I just gave a talk to physicists maybe like a month ago. I was preparing for this talk for like a month because that's a different kind of conversation. There's a certain rigor they expect from you. There's the second you're going to kind of say a thing a little bit wrong, they'd be like, you know.
Yeah.
And because yes, I have a little bit like a tiny background in physics, but not nowhere near like a physicist level. So I had to be very careful where I'm stepping, right? But I was so nervous about it, and I'm never nervous about talking to anyone. And I was really surprised. What an incredible and
Yeah.
receptive, and it was because I think it depends on where you are in the game. I think people who have a chip on their shoulder, it's usually because they already are suffering for some other reason, and then they obviously just project, right? They're just like angry at everything, and everything is stupid, and every. But people, I think, have become a certain level of success. They want to play, they want to
Oh
expand. They
no.
wanna-
And people are
yeah.
looking for it. I gave a talk to a lab at the medical school at Yale, and which was awesome.
Well,
And but what surprised me the most of that experience was, as we got into it, someone's talking about, because I read people for a living. That's my special sauce, right? And someone's talking about a question about a patient. I'm like, ooh, can I tune in and see what I get? And there were a few glazed eyeballs. There are a few people in that lab. I don't think that they were super excited about what I do, but other people were eating it up. So I do think that there's an openness for it. And I also do think that, the people that are doing and I, like I said, I'm not against science. I love science. I have many scientist friends. And I think that the people that are bridging that gap, the people that are, in the ivory towers of Yale and Princeton, where I came up, and all those places that are really open to this, they're doing important work too. So I love that you bridge the gap. I think it's so important. And I think people on both sides of that gap want that bridge, right? And that
Yeah.
we're at a place now where that really, really needs to happen. I want to switch gears though, because I'm mindful of the time,
Sure.
because I want to hear a little bit more about what happened with what's happening with DMT and the laser, and what that experience has been like for you, and what that even means, because we haven't talked about that at all.
So the story is pretty long. We're finishing a documentary about it now. It's the story took place over about 10 years, so there's no way we're going to be able to dial it in.
Okay.
Yeah, but that people can
Abbreviated, and then when the movie
sure,
comes
yeah,
out, everyone's going to want to see it.
there you go. It's called The Discovery. It's probably going to be coming out in April. Everybody should look for it. Shout out to Aaron Venden, the director. He's a master of his craft, and we really tried. And this might actually also help kind of answer some of your question. We really tried to speak more than just my story, and kind of like what are the implications here, right? Because if I am correct with what I'm saying, and people should feel very free to come very skeptical. But if I am correct about what I'm saying, and there is this possibility of observation of something objective, so to speak, that we can all see, and we have now thousands of replications all around the world. I had scientists come in and go, "What?" And I had spiritual workers who were really good at moving energy and things like this, and they came in, guns blazing. They're like, "Let me show you how it's done. I'm gonna influence it. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna this. I'm gonna that." Came out confused. They're like, "What? Like it's not moving. It's just doing its own thing. What is going on?" So I think there's some kind of an interesting thing happening here, and this speaks to like what my experience was, because I didn't come to this. I mean, now it will be kind of hard to convince anybody who's extra skeptical about me personally as a person, which is absolutely understandable and fine. It would be hard for me, for example, now in retrospect, to convince people that I didn't start from assumptions. Like I actually became very neutral. And by the way, the simulation theory was never even in the back of my mind. In fact, if anything, because I do always keep myself updated about like all the newest science things and stuff, because I'm a big nerd about this stuff. The simulation theory, I'll be quite frank, kind of bored me. Like it's not interesting. It's not interesting because there's not much you can do with it. It means if it is in fact simulated by some other civilization, right? Then in physics, you like to tie things in nicer and nicer bundles. Like you don't like things to become more complicated. You like it to become less complicated, right? But then this literally opens up the ceiling into infinity of complexity, which is like, who knows from that point? Like maybe.
So talk about simulation theory, because I can promise you my listeners have never heard of you, and they've probably never heard of that.
Got it. So simulation theory simply states that we are more likely living in a computer simulated world than we are in what we would call a physical world. And of course, some people think that it's somehow an attack on the idea that we live in a spiritual world. So I want to calm everybody down. Just in case somebody is feeling that, because it does happen. It does not mean, it doesn't say anything about the nature of the content. So all it's saying is that the nature of how the kind of the structure is operating, the rules that it follows are computational rules at bottom that then give rise to what we call the physical rules. So it's just not the other way around, right?
Right.
And this idea is not new. It was expressed by many scientists throughout the ages. Wheeler famously said it from bit, which is like, this is not a new idea.
Right.
The simulation hypothesis in more modern times was best outlined by Nick Bostrom, who's a Swedish philosopher who wrote a really famous white paper that basically made only 3 assumptions in order to kind of say that the chances that we don't live in a simulation are close to 0, if not 0, basically. And it's based on 3 assumptions. First one is, we know for a fact that computation is real and we can simulate things now, right? We also notice that graphics get better and better and better every year. And this is where sometimes people like to invoke the Moore's law, which is like, computation kind of every year and a half, it kind of doubles in its power. That's actually irrelevant. It doesn't really matter how long it's going to. It's going to happen in a million years. Who cares? The universe is is going to exist for way longer than that, right? So all you have to do is to kind of say, okay, if we can simulate things, we know we can do this. And already now we have some things like Apple Vision Pro that you're like, whoa, like that's kind of start dancing with like more real than real kind of thing, right? So if we know we can do it and you run the clock forward, eventually it's pretty obvious that we will be able to render something that is indistinguishable from what this looks like, right? Including, by the way, inculcating all the other senses, not just vision, but like you're, fully immersive. Okay, well then the only other thing you have to assume now is, what are the chances that we're the first one to do it? So if that's possible, the chances we're the first one to do something is basically 0. So the kind of the principle of mediocrity, which just means that there's way more. It's way more likely that we live in one of the simulated worlds than in some
All
base
right.
reality.
So I got to stop you because
Sure,
again, my peeps, my peeps talk about intuition and spirit guides. So this is
sure,
probably stretching their sweet little brains, and maybe not. Maybe some of you guys are way cooler than me. So maybe it's just stretching my little brain.
sure, sure.
But I think that what I understand you're saying is, because we talk about holographic, you know, reality and stuff like that all the time. Totally familiar with that idea, right? That we are creating this, that, whatever, a kind of waking dream kind of jam. But that's not what you're talking about. What you're talking about, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that maybe our reality that we are experiencing is maybe part of someone else's simulation, right?
Yes, with
Someone
one
else
jet.
meaning something non-human, which again,
Yeah.
you are assuming that a lot of people out there believe that there is more than just us in the universe. I'm among those people, but not
But
everyone.
so there's
Not
a few things.
everyone buys into that either.
So there's a couple of things here, and I want to be respectful of time, but there's a couple of things I do want to touch on
Go for
before
it.
we
We're
go our
good.
turn. Yeah,
We can use the editing if we need to.
sure, sure. So there's only a couple of things that are really important for me to say. The first one is simulation does not mean fake. That's the first thing.
Okay.
So like in the sense like the confusion is understandable because we only simulate things when like we render things like other things, right? We
Right.
simulate laws of physics, we simulate this, we simulate that. But and stick with me here. So
Mm-hmm.
if we assume that the fundamental world is not computational, and computation is something that arises within the world, either it's spiritual, physical, doesn't matter, but it's within the world, then simulations, by definition, are kind of like an virtual layer inside of what we call the real world. So yes, in that case, it would be justified to say it's less real than reality. But if we assume that computation, for what it is in its deepest constituents and what computational laws are, is the fundamental substrate, not the other way around, then it flips. Because now what the real world is actually the computational world. And our world is just one subset within that world.
Yeah.
However, this does not say anything about the reality of the situation, because if you stub your toe in the middle of the night and I tell you it's all Maya, don't worry about it, you'll want to slap me. You're like, hey man, that hurts. It's real for you.
Right.
So as long as there's a conscious being experiencing it, it's reality. So let's not confuse the terms. It doesn't mean you're fake. It doesn't mean you're a puppet. And at least according to what I'm observing so far, what is simulated is the construct, not outcomes or agency, which means you are completely free, exactly how you believed before, and what you do actually has your discernment actually matters in the larger scale of things. So if anything, you can just think of it, it's almost like God is using computational rules to simulate the infinite worlds to do whatever God is choosing to do, if you want to use that language, right? And the second thing I wanted to touch on is that you have an opportunity here to actually marry what the kind of like the thing that most of mainstream science would be a lot more resistant to in the spiritual realm. And you can actually bring it into the picture a lot easier because it's a way lower slope to say to them, okay, it's not what you think is God. Forget about these words. It's actually a computational world in which more is possible than you previously considered because there's actually an external agent doing its own thing and they're like different. And I would say that this is obviously whenever somebody claims objectivity for the own argument, it's it's very upsetting to other
You
people.
got an infinite Russian doll going on here in my
Exactly.
mind.
Yeah. But I would say that postulating that there is no life, I think is it's a wilder assumption than that there isn't. It's like what are the chances if somebody understands the size scale of the universe, the chances that we're alone? I mean, that's just like we're the biggest fluke in existence. I mean, that's just crazy. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's that much of a stretch.
Agreed. I'm just saying for a lot of our population, it is. It's not, I don't think it's something that a lot of people take for granted. I'm not arguing with it. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just saying I don't think it's a given for a lot of folks yet. Could be wrong.
Is that really
I don't know.
your impression?
I haven't done the research, so I have
No,
no
no, no.
idea.
No, I'm just asking about your impression. Your impression is that most people, you think it's hard for them to digest. I just feel, and maybe it's the bubble I'm in. It's very possible. But I just feel like actually most people are very kind of on the side of like, oh, of course there is. Like, I don't know. It
Yeah.
just feels to me
I mean,
that way.
I feel like in the world in which I live, it's a given. But I'm not sure that every, the average person on the I'm gonna do some empirical research on that because now I'm really curious.
Sure.
All right. This is fascinating. So we are gonna have to wind it down in a minute.
Sure.
So all of this came to you from this simulation. You do the DMT and you put a laser on the wall and you see the computational structure of the universe. Am I
You,
am
you,
I
you, so, no, so the reason that the story is long is because the steps it took me to get there are very tedious and over years. But the short version of it was I had an extra realistic experience in the DMT space. So I've had a lot of experience before, and all of
okay?
a sudden, for years, and all of a sudden, I had an experience that was just like not on the map, and I was like,
Okay.
What is that?" And then I said, "Okay, there's no way this is in my head. There's just no way." And then I started asking, "Okay, well, if it is real, how can we potentially say something concrete about it, right? Like, how do we discern this?" And that was the question that started guiding me basically for years. And I started asking questions more from the kind of like the more scientific perspective, like what must be true if it's real. And I was incorporating also things that are, I guess, a lot less scientifically methodological. They're more kind of like open minded thinking. And eventually I landed on this idea after a few ideas that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface, and I didn't even know what's exactly supposed to happen, but the kind of the hints led me there. I was like, something's supposed to happen. I don't know what it is. And to be quite honest, I wasn't expecting it to work because usually these things are like a goose chase, like nothing ever works.
Right.
So when it did work, I was like, and forget about that. When I started showing other people and everybody reported the same thing,
That's impressive.
that was crazy. That was, and when I got to person 80, then I was like, okay, I got to email a scientist or something because this is
Okay.
just beyond. Yeah.
Okay. And quick, what was the experience? What did you get when you did this experiment?
Well, you basically see, it's gonna sound,
That's all right. We've gone everywhere today.
yeah. Well,
There's
no, it's
there's
gonna
no
sound,
limits.
yeah. Well, it's gonna sound too convenient. I was about to say, it kind of looks like in the movie The Matrix. So like
Okay.
it straight up looks like some kind of a hyper construct that just kind of runs there. It does not have an appearance of a hallucination. It's space permanent. So when you look at it, it you can look from all directions and it's doing its own thing. It stays in place in relationship to you. If you move the light, it's not moving with the light. So it's like it's almost like a flashlight that just reveals it. You can see it on your skin. You can see it on every single surface. We tried every possible surface we can imagine. We try to play with sounds, with frequencies, with binaural beats, with Monroe recordings, with powerful magnets. We even went to a lab in New Jersey where we did like tests inside of the Faraday cage. We did like all kinds of things. We're actually going to be running a new test the beginning of next month, in the next year. We're going to try and eliminate the speckle almost entirely. So we spoke with a laser scientist and we got this special surface that basically kind of eliminates almost all speckle. And then we're going to also use a rotating glass to see if we can just eliminate speckle entirely. Because one of the biggest pushbacks is, oh, it's just the speckle effect, and
I don't know what the speckle effect is, but I
when
believe you. It's a
when,
thing.
when you shine a laser, it looks kind of like shiny, right? It has this glisten stuff inside.
Okay.
Just project any laser on the surface, you'll see it.
Okay.
That's the speckle effect. So scientists always say, oh, it's just the speckle effect with a psychedelic drug, and it's kind of doing something.
But it's
So
doing the same thing for everybody all the time when you do it.
everybody all the time, and not only that, it's the rigidity of it. It just, I don't know if did you see the trailer that we did, like the older one?
No.
No, so I'll share with you after we're done.
Okay.
The older trailer. Now that when the movie comes out, it already looks a lot different. But the
And
old
we'll
trailer
have
that
links,
went viral.
friends, for all of that, where you
Sure,
can find it all on the show notes. Somehow I
sure.
missed that in my research this morning, but go ahead.
No worries. So the trailer that went viral and everybody knows, the thing that is so compelling about it is people's reactions. It's very you have a PhD in psychology. It's very difficult to, if not, I don't know if it's impossible, but it's very difficult to fake true awe because there's always a little bit of acting involved. We're always kind of playing something for the viewer, right? But when you're fully in the presence of something that you just completely wipes clean your acting, something happens on the face that is different. That's what you see in the clip. Chase Hughes, who's this behavioral body expert, reached out to me after he saw the trailer a few years ago. He said, my job, because he trained people how to do investigations for the government, things like this. And he's like, my job is to smell bullshit from 10,000 miles away. Said, I watched your trailer 50 times in a row. I could not find one tell in people that are seeing this thing. And then he's like, I'm gonna have he literally had his assistant like fly me to his house immediately. He's like, I gotta see what they're looking at, because that's crazy. So
Wow.
there's something about that reaction that tells a big chunk of the story, I would say. People's faces.
All right, I got one more question before we wind it down. Why the DMT? Right? So it's not just a laser. You got to also have the medicine, right?
We don't know. I
Okay.
tried. We don't know, and that's actually one of the biggest conundrums. I think it might have something to do with kind of. I think it's frames per second. So I think what DMT does, it allows you more rendering of reality. Literally, like just like in a camera, just like more shutter speed and more frames per second of reality itself. But that's an assumption. We don't know if that's the case. It just feels that way. And we now know that it works with all tryptamines. We know it works with ayahuasca as well. We know it works with 5-MeO, which is crazy because 5-MeO presents itself completely differently. And
Okay.
it's even clearer with 5-MeO.
And
There's
5-MeO is what?
the buffo, the what people do in with the frog, like
That's what I
the
thought. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. It's a different kind of experience. It's more of it's less content. It's just full dissolution. You're kind of in the presence of some
Right. And
divine
it's
presence.
a very different medicine. Got it.
Very
Okay.
different medicine. And we even had a case that we didn't expect. We didn't even think of this. But some people, there's 1% of the population that because the substances bind in their brain a little bit differently, they're for all intents and purposes they're immune to DMT. Immune is the wrong word, but they can't experience it. They can smoke a whole
Right.
cartridge, nothing will happen. So we had an individual like this who just happened to be in a place where we're doing the tests, and I saw him kind of puffing away. I was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he told me like, "I can't, no matter how much I smoke." I was like, "Interesting. Would you like to try the laser still?" He's
Wow.
like, "Sure." This is the crazy part. He can't see any hallucinations at all,
But
but
he
he
had the
could see the
experience.
code.
Wow.
He could see the code, and only when he smoked, I was like, "What? That's crazy."
That is really fascinating. I gotta
Yeah.
say, you got me on that one.
So, anyways,
Wow.
that's kind of like where it's at, and there's gonna be. I published a little. It's not a peer reviewed paper or anything like this, but it was published in a physics newsletter. Sorry, in IPI, and I have to say that I was kind of. It's literally it got their award of the year of the most read paper. It was
That
yeah, it was like clicked on like 16,000 times. It was crazy. But I mean, to be quite honest, if I think about it, it's not that much of a stretch because it's like DMT lasers in a physics paper. It was like everybody gonna click on that. It's very
right.
memeable. But we slowly getting traction in terms of like really doing the science in a more serious way. But also a thing that I think you would appreciate, the more we go through this, the more it becomes clear that whatever is happening spiritually to humanity, this is all tied to it. This is one of many emergences that are happening now. As you know, a lot of people going through an awakening, and this is all connected to our ability to understand, to perceive more, to kind of deal with more of what reality is ready to bring our way.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm gonna do a deep dive. I can't wait for the movie. And this was a really fun conversation, my friend. You have a spectacular mind, and it was definitely fun to play with it. So I'm glad we did it. I ask everybody on the show
Sure,
one question. So get ready. We're going in maybe in another direction, maybe not. I don't know.
sure.
How do you experience your intuition?
Uh, Simple. When I the classical story, when I started healing my traumas through multiple modalities, I became more connected to my body. Very known thing. It's like, and then I experienced my intuition more and more and more in my body, with the slight added thing that I feel like I'm maybe bringing to the picture. I don't think that the goal is to fully recede from the kind of cerebral mind. I think the idea is to inform it more through the intuition, but stay very connected to it because it brings certain types of form that, when they're inspired by the divine or whatever you want to call it, depending on your worldview, it produces way more interesting and way more coherent content. So actually, you can build way more beautiful technologies, way more, all
Oh,
of
for
these things. But
sure.
yeah. So that's how I
Yeah.
experienced my
I
intuition,
don't think our
using the body.
intuition was supposed to work completely independent of the mind. I think those two
Yeah,
things are absolutely supposed to play together. Otherwise, it wouldn't be any fun to be here at all. I mean, it might
exactly.
be. It might be more fun to be here. I don't know, but but that's not what most of us signed up for. Danny, thank you so much. This was great. If people want to learn more about you, connect, I don't know, do the stuff. I don't know if you have stuff that people can do. Tell us more about that so they can
Uh,
find you.
the best way to find me is just on my YouTube channel. It's Dango Thoughts, Dango Thoughts, 3 words. And there you can find all my links. And it's just Instagram and TikTok, all of that stuff. It's just Danny Goler, one
Okay.
word, and Danny Goler. If people do want to find out more, they can go to codeofreality.com. There we have the protocol and the types of lasers you need to get and all that stuff. People don't need to remember any of this because all of this would be also on the website. But we built a tool called veilbreak.ai, and that's basically kind of like a GitHub of the laser experiment. So you can anonymously leave a report, and it's just going to live there as a repository for the public, and you can see other people's reports and like exactly
Cool.
how they did it and all that stuff. And yeah.
Beautifulness. And if you guys are listening to this when it goes live, you can and you happen to have the capability to get to LA, you can also see Danny at the Conscious Life Expo. I'll be there too. And yay. And so are you going to be doing a workshop? What are you going to be doing there?
I'm just going to give a talk.
Okay, beautiful. So you can catch his talk there and meet him in person if that's something that you want to do. And you can see yours truly. I'll be there as well speaking. So it's really fun if you guys can get out to that one. And any parting words before we wrap this one up?
No, just thank you so much for having me, and that was a blast.
Yay, same. And thank all of you out there listening. Because of you, I get to do this thing that I love to do. And I'm very, 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 very grateful. I feel very, very blessed. And namaste.